best. It's Wednesday here on The Story, and tonight, it's a question that we get a lot. Why are gas prices on the West Coast way more expensive than anywhere else? Well, we've got answers. Plus, embezzlement, extradition, and the Eugene Weekly newspaper. Why Governor Tina Kotek changed her mind about paying the tab to bring a suspect back to Oregon, and why that decision comes a few days late. But first, why a Multnomah County commissioner wants to make major cuts to the Office of Sustainability to fund efforts to fight homelessness. Well, she joins me live in just a few minutes, but not everyone is thrilled by the idea. And it's our big story tonight.
If we lose that, we're losing that proactive, effective work to protect our community from the climate crisis that we're in.
Well, that's the warning from an environmental leader in Portland. Mary Pivoteau co-founded Neighbors for Clean Air. They're a grassroots advocacy organization based downtown. They've been around for 15 years, fighting for, you guessed it, clean air.
In our communities, in our neighborhoods where our children are playing and living, and address the regulatory gaps that potentially still leave them at harm.
But when it comes to addressing larger threats to the environment, that's where Mary's team relies on Multnomah County's Office of Sustainability.
They've been our kind of key ally almost from the beginning because, again, what we saw in this gap in the regulations is that this is a public health issue.
So what exactly does the Office of Sustainability do? Well, along with supporting local groups like Mary's, it works to reduce the county's carbon footprint, like making county buildings more efficient and preventing high diesel emissions at county-run construction sites. It also advocates for changing laws that impact the environment. For example, the county's wood smoke ordinance, which prohibits wood-burning fires on days when air quality is forecast to be poor. And the office is also a sort of center point, if you will, for all the other climate work happening in the county. Now, a good example is their climate justice plan. It's right there. It was released earlier this month. Part of their plan is transitioning the community to 100% renewable electricity by 2035 and 100% renewable energy by 2050. However, any momentum towards those goals could soon slow or stop thanks to proposed budget cuts. Commissioner Megan Moyer is proposing the largest cut, eliminating 4 positions, leaving just 1 person in the entire office.
Stunned, absolutely stunned. For an office that operates on a tiny budget, the outsized impact that it's had in proactive public health work related to air pollution, to the climate, to the critical energy infrastructure, the CI hub, which is a disaster waiting to happen in our community. Them being the only government entity that's really stepped in and stepped up to address, how we mitigate that risk. The problems that they're taking on are huge, and they do it at a tiny cost. So it makes no sense.
Now, cutting those 4 positions would save the county nearly $700,000. Commissioner Moyer wants to put most of that towards fighting the immediate crisis on our streets by expanding a homeless mobile intake team and providing services to people with mental illness. On Thursday at 2, there's a rally outside the county building against these potential cuts.
I don't think it's one for one. I think these are false choices that they're giving us in terms of when, pulling from one to put to the other.
Okay, now another person warning against these cuts is a familiar face, former Multnomah County Commissioner Shashila Jayapal. She sent a letter to the Board of Commissioners this morning, and I caught up with her just a few hours ago.
Let me just say that this is such a hard budget year that the Commission is facing, and as I said in the letter, I really didn't take it lightly to decide to say something. But the reason I decided to say something about sustainability is, to me, this is a different kind of cut. This is gutting an entire body of work. It's gutting work, the county's work on sustainability and climate change, when we know that climate change is the most existential threat that we're facing. There's no other organization in the county, in this region, that I think has the credibility, the trust with community organizations, and the expertise to do that kind of convening work.
Now, Jayapal argues it's a relatively small department in terms of cost, and the county, in her opinion, should be able to fund both efforts, fighting climate change and homelessness, not one or the other.
It already took a cut in the chair's proposed budget. It's now in there at about $1 million. It's a department that punches above its weight. It's a force multiplier. I think it's really hard for all of us to spend time, money, energy, investment in preventing long-term harm when we see what's happening imminently, but we've got to be able to do both. The message that it sends to say climate change and sustainability are not a priority, given what we see happening in the city, the county, the region, go on and on, is also pretty damaging.
So joining me live now is Multnomah County Commissioner Megan Moyer. Commissioner Moyer, thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, so you heard former Commissioner Jayapal there saying making cuts to the Office of Sustainability sends the wrong message to the community. So tell me, are climate change and sustainability priorities for you? Because this proposal suggests otherwise.
Well, I think it is really important to differentiate between a standalone office that is not part of any department or part of county management that puts proposals forward with 6 FTE as our standard of what is committed to sustainability. My proposal is not an elimination. It's actually saying we need to embed sustainability in county management and in every department that Multnomah County has. It can't be a standalone entity that advises, from afar. It has to be embedded as we design every program, as we look at every new project, as we create health policy. So, I really want to push back against FTEs or, number of employees with the title sustainability is the definition of how committed Multnomah County is to sustainable practices. I'm actually pushing a proposal that embeds sustainability systemically throughout the county and not as this isolated office. So, I push back against that frame. And I would also say the two offices that have both, now my reduction in staff is the highest, but Commissioner Singleton also identified two positions. We are, viewed as the two most progressive members of the county commission, and certainly have gained the support, and I was proud to gain the support of environmental organizations, and neither of us would say we are stepping back from our commitment to sustainability.
So we did hear, though, earlier in the show, what this office does, and some people say it does a lot of good work, and some argue that leaving just one person to do the work of an entire office will be completely ineffective. What do you make of that?
Well, I'm going to push back that it's been this incredibly effective entity. I think it is a little bit of greenwashing. Here we do put forward a department that has focused on the actions of other entities, other governments, telling them what to do, but has in fact no role officially in how the county itself operates, what our sustainability is. Was not a leader, frankly, in the CEI conversation. I had two top priorities coming in to office. One was a tough, important CEI hub ordinance, and the other had to do with board rules. And the Office of Sustainability, without the authority to do so, without board input, went down to Salem and told the legislature that we were okay with being preempted from doing something locally for a bill that the legislature is putting forward, which is far less ambitious than what I was working on. So, I push back that they have been this incredibly effective entity. I also think, it is not the job of an office to decide the policy of the county and to go lobby on behalf of Multnomah County with other government entities that we didn't reach out to, we didn't talk to, and we haven't cleaned up our own house. So, I'm really saying we have to lead internally. we have to take accountability. I think as a member of the queer community, I am pretty skeptical about performative allyship or performative leadership. I'm about results. Corporate pride is insulting to a lot of the queer community, much like I think telling every other government how to be green, while we're not digging deep about what is our input, what is our authority. The climate action plan, I actually recommend people read it and then say to me how much of what is in that action plan is actually in the control of Multnomah County, and how much of it is totally outside of our control, and say, was that really the right use of over $1 million a year?
So stepping back, though, looking at the entire $4 billion county budget, the Office of Sustainability comes in around $1 million, so it's relatively small. I mean, were there any other departments where cuts could be made, or are you just solely targeted on this one in this case?
Oh, absolutely not. And I've said very clearly that my priorities when it comes to budget allocations are direct services to the public. And so I am internally have been an absolute hound on the growth of HR in the county and the amount of HR employees we have in relationship to the number of overall employees we have. And I'm actively pushing a reduction there. I'm putting forward tomorrow a proposal about restraining our materials and supplies budget. I've asked us to look at all of our internal functions, because we have to be able to deliver a high level of service in a budget constraint environment, not just this year, but for the next several years. So, I have been honest that I am putting direct services above internal services to the county, because we have to continue to deliver to our most vulnerable. And the proposal that I put in place as to use this money instead is a program to actively reach out to our homeless population that experience severe mental illness, enroll them in Medicaid long-term care, and be able to have the federal government pay to support those individuals in housing and in services long-term. That $500,000 commitment will result, hopefully, in $10 million worth of services. So I am looking at maximizing every penny to deliver for the residents of Multnomah County.
Okay, Commissioner Megan Moyer, thanks for your time tonight.
Thank you.
Now, again, this is just a proposal. The final vote on the county budget is expected June 12th. But talk to us. What do you think about Commissioner Moyer's amendment? Should the Office of Sustainability be trimmed down to just one position, moving that money towards homeless efforts? Email us at thestory@kgw.com or call and leave a voicemail, 503-226-5090. Well, let's go now to a twist today on a story we've been following for a while. About a year and a half ago, the Eugene Weekly newspaper found out that someone was embezzling from them, taking tens of thousands of dollars. The paper's editor says it could be as high as $300,000. Now, it nearly caused the paper to close for good before being saved by the community, who stepped up in a huge way. Now, earlier this month, the paper's former business manager was arrested in Ohio for the crime. But at first, Oregon Governor Tina Kotek's office said the state was not going to pay for her to be extradited back to Oregon to face charges. They said the Lane County DA could pay for it. More on that later. But this afternoon, after we asked the governor's office why the state wouldn't pay, they told us, actually, the governor changed her mind. Here's what happened. Eugene's Weekly's former business manager, Alicia Young, was arrested in Whitehall, Ohio during a traffic stop. She had a nationwide warrant against her after a grand jury indicted her for embezzlement. But days later, she was released from custody because Oregon decided not to extradite her. Here's Camilla Mortensen, Eugene Weekly's editor-in-chief.
I was stunned, and I think it was unexpected for the local law enforcement as well, who've put so much effort into this. I had been following, looking online. I saw that she had been arrested. I saw that it was in the courts, and then I saw she was no longer in jail. And I thought, well, is this part of the extradition process? What's happening? And finally, I reached out and I contacted the DA and Eugene Police to ask what had happened. And that was when I found out that within days of her arrest and within, I think, like an hour of their request for the extradition, that the extradition had been turned down by the governor's office. And I wasn't expecting that. I wasn't expecting it. My staff wasn't expecting it. And we were floored.
Okay, so we reached out to the governor's office today to ask why someone accused of embezzling hundreds of thousands of dollars would not be brought back to the state to face charges. They responded that the state does not have the money to extradite every fugitive. But they said that in this case, the governor changed course. They told us, quote, after further consideration and reflecting on the impact to the broader community by the theft committed against the Eugene Weekly, the governor directed staff today to approve the extradition. Extradition requests are evaluated under the governor's office's policy guidelines, with exceptions considered on a case-by-case basis. Now, we asked how much it would cost to extradite Young, and they didn't answer. But the district attorney in Lane County, who's prosecuting this case, gave us his estimate today.
I estimate that it would be somewhere, in the $3,000 to $6,000 range, which in and of itself isn't a great deal of money, of course, to a community. It's not nothing. But this was bigger than that. For me, this was about the larger principle of the matter, in that the Eugene Police Department or the Lane County District Attorney's Office could find money, though our budgets are tight, to ultimately pay for the extradition of this individual. But we're not funded for that. We don't have, as a part of our routine budgets, a extradition fund. So, yeah, we could have probably scrambled, and frankly, our community was great. I can't tell you how many emails and calls I got saying that they would be willing to start a GoFundMe or something to pay for the extradition of this person.
Okay, but here's the problem. Yes, the governor changed her mind and will pay to bring Young back, but she was already released from custody in Ohio as this whole who will pay for it drama played out. So now the Lane County DA has to reissue the nationwide warrant and wait to see if Young gets arrested again in order to bring her back to Oregon. Well, coming up next on the story, it's a question that we get fairly often. Why are gas prices on the West Coast so much higher than the rest of the country? Well, our Verified team found there's not just one reason why, but a pile of them. We'll explain when the story returns. Well, now that the Memorial Day holiday is behind us, here's a look at average gas prices right now. Here in Portland, we're looking at $4.07 a gallon. That's down from 28 cents from a year ago. Now, the national average sits at $3.13, down 43 cents from this time in 2024. Those differences between Portland prices and the rest of the country have not been lost on many of you.
I'm calling to see if you guys can investigate why gas prices are so high on the West Coast. I have friends in Texas, and they say anywhere around Texas, middle of the country, and the East Coast, gas prices are $2.85. There is no reason whatsoever for our gas prices to be so high. Can you please investigate?
And Claudia recently wrote to us saying, why is most of the rest of the country enjoying cheap gas and we aren't? Well, our Verify team has looked into this a few times, so let's dive in. When Gary called us earlier this month, the average price per gallon in Texas was $2.76, and every other central and eastern state was below $3.50. Oregon was at $3.90, Washington was at $4.26, and California was at $4.78. And that's pretty much how things always look. West Coast gas prices go up and down just like everywhere else, but they're almost always the highest in the country at any given time. Now, to explain why, let's start with the gas tax. It's 40 cents per gallon in Oregon, but the legislature is considering raising that all the way to 60 cents. In Washington, it's 49 cents, but that goes up to 55 cents a gallon on July 1st. Now, every state has its own gas tax, but California, Washington, and Oregon are all in the top 10 states with the highest rates, and they're also in the top 10 for gas prices. So we can put at least some blame on our gas taxes, but that doesn't account for all the price difference between Oregon and Texas, for example. So what else is going on? Tighter environmental regulations on the West Coast are also a factor. But just like the gas tax, they only account for one slice of the price difference at the pump. Our Verify team found that what it really comes down to is geography. Gas starts out as crude oil, and so the further you are from sources of crude oil, the more expensive it becomes to get gas to a pump near you. It's no coincidence that Texas has some of the cheapest gas, because it's the top crude oil producer in the U.S., pumping more than 40% of domestic crude oil. New Mexico and North Dakota are also heavy hitters. Oregon and Washington don't produce any crude oil. And that's not because of environmental regulations. There just isn't much oil beneath our region. This map here is from the Oregon Department of Energy. Now, put all of those elements together, and you start to get a good idea of why we pay so much more at the pump. But wait. There's more. Most of our gas comes from Alaska, North Dakota, and Canada's biggest oil region, Alberta. But the issue is how crude oil is transported. The cheapest way is pipelines. This map here tells the story pretty clearly. We're cut off, mostly thanks to the Rocky Mountains. We have just one pipeline from Alberta. Everything else has to come in by train or ship, which is a lot more expensive. And those costs get passed on at the pump. But if you can believe it, that's not our only infrastructure problem. Crude oil needs to be refined to make gasoline. And Oregon has 0 refineries. We get almost all our finished gas from Washington, which has a few refineries in the Puget Sound area, but only a few. Other parts of the country have enough refinery capacity to build up gas surpluses, leading to lower, more consistent prices. But in the Pacific Northwest, we're usually consuming gas as fast as we can produce it. So any refinery problems can quickly cause supply crunches and price spikes. And don't expect any refineries to be built here. AAA says as the car industry shifts towards electric, especially here in the West, a commercial investment in Oregon for gasoline production is not going to be popular. So, what do you think should be done about our high gas prices? Any solutions come to mind? Feel free to just vent to us about how much you pay at the gas pump, too. Email us the story at kgw.com or call and leave a voicemail, 503-226-5090. Well, that is the end of our show, folks. Thanks so much for watching. The good stuff is coming your way next. And don't forget, everyone has a story to tell. If you ever miss an episode of this story at 6:30, we re-air it at 8:30 and 10:30 p.m. on our TV app, KGW+. You can also catch us the following morning at 11:30 a.m. Download the free app now on Roku, Apple TV, and Fire TV. In the meantime, enjoy the rest of this beautiful Tuesday night, and I'll see you right back here tomorrow night at 6:30.